Stage 1. The Discovery. You're 34. You are a data analyst at a private research firm in Geneva that contracts with governments and international institutions to model geopolitical risk. On a Tuesday night in November, you are running a correlation model across 40 years of global financial, conflict, and public health data simultaneously. You find a pattern, not the one you were looking for. The model flags a statistical relationship so improbable that your first assumption is a processing error. You run it again. It holds. You run it a third time with a different methodology. It holds again. What the model is showing you is that 17 of the 23 largest geopolitical crises of the last 40 years were preceded by an identical sequence of financial movements across a specific cluster of accounts. Not similar. Identical. Down to the timing. Down to the instrument. As if someone knew what was coming. As if someone made it come. You sit at your desk for a long time. The office is empty. The city outside is dark. You close the model. You open it again. The pattern is still there. It will always be there now. You cannot unknow it. This is the last quiet moment of your life. Stage 2. The verification. You spend 3 months checking, not at work, at home, on a private machine, through academic sources and public records and declassified documents. You bring in one person, a former colleague, a statistician named Vera, the most rigorous person you have ever worked with, someone who has never in 15 years told anyone anything they asked her not to. You show her the model. She goes quiet in a way that is different from her usual quiet. She spends a week running her own analysis. She comes back and sits across from you in your kitchen and says it's real. She says the probability of this pattern occurring naturally is less than 1 in 400 billion. She says someone has been engineering crises, financial crashes, conflicts for 40 years, using a financial signature so consistent it is essentially a fingerprint, and has never been caught because nobody was looking at all the data simultaneously. She asks what you are going to do, what you are. You say you don't know yet. This is true. It will stop being true within the week. Stage 3. The wait. You know, and knowing is its own country, with its own weather. You go to work. You sit in meetings. You eat lunch. You ride the tram home. Everything is the same, and nothing is the same, because the thing you know sits inside every ordinary moment, like a stone inside a shoe. You start seeing the signature everywhere, now that you know what to look for. A currency crisis 3 years ago. A banking collapse attributed to mismanagement. A political assassination that destabilized a region and opened it to specific economic intervention. The fingerprint is there every time. Consistent. Patient. Decades of it. You stop sleeping well. Not because you are afraid yet, because the mind cannot hold this information without it reorganizing everything around it. The source is where the people are. The people are what you need. The people are also the most dangerous thing you could ever find. Stage 4. The trace. 8 months. The account cluster is layered through jurisdictions chosen for their opacity. Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, a private bank in Liechtenstein with 17 clients and no public presence. You cannot access the ownership directly. You follow the exits. The exits go to foundations, holding companies, real estate vehicles, but several go somewhere more specific. To the operational budgets of organizations whose function, mapped against the crisis timeline, is to manage the aftermath of the crises the financial signature preceded. Not to cause crises, to profit from them and shape the recovery. You are looking at 40 years of the most sophisticated long-term strategy in human history. Not conspiracy in the dramatic sense. Something colder and more patient. an investment thesis applied to human civilization at scale. You identify 4 individuals at the structural center, 4 names. Between them, they control assets, an influence spanning every major economy on Earth. You write the names in a notebook. You photograph it, encrypt the photograph, store it in 3 locations, destroy the notebook. You have learned to treat information the way a bomb disposal technician treats ordnance. The wrong move ends everything. Stage 5. The approach. You need to tell the right person. 6 weeks to establish an indirect channel to a journalist with the right track record. You send a structured summary. Not everything. Enough. She responds within an hour. She wants to meet. You choose a city neither of you lives in. You arrive 40 minutes early. You watch the street for 20 minutes before entering. She is already inside. Smaller than her photographs suggest, and more still. She has had 2 colleagues independently verify the statistical methodology. She says it holds. She says publishing will require corroboration that takes time, and the time creates risk. She asks if you have told anyone else. You think about Vera. You say no. You are protecting Vera. She says say nothing to no one. She says be careful in a way that contains more specificity than the words themselves convey. On the train home, you feel the stone in the shoe more heavily than ever. You are no longer alone with it. This is better, and also considerably more dangerous. Stage 6. The visit. 2 men come to your office on a Thursday morning. Not police. Something adjacent. Professionally, specifically polite in the way that politeness is used as a demonstration of control. They say your personal research into certain financial data sets has come to the attention of parties with concerns about how the findings might be used. They say the data contains information classified under statutes you were not informed of when you were granted access. They say your employment, your clearance, and your personal situation would benefit from discontinuing this research and ensuring any derived materials are secured appropriately. They use the phrase secured appropriately twice. You understand what it means. You say you understand. They leave. You call the journalist from a payphone 2 blocks away. You say they came. She says she knows. She says it means the corroboration is working. She says the timeline has changed. She says, how quickly can you move? You say, how quickly do you need? She says, fast. Stage 7. The exposure. The publication is coordinated across 6 outlets in 4 countries simultaneously to prevent suppression in any single jurisdiction. The story runs on a Wednesday morning. The financial pattern, the statistical analysis, the 40-year timeline, the 4 names, no speculation, only data, and the conclusions the data requires. By noon, it is the most read story on 3 continents. By 3 p.m., 2 of the 4 named individuals have issued denials through lawyers, carefully worded to dispute the characterization of the evidence rather than the evidence itself. By evening, 2 governments have announced inquiries. You are not named. You are in a hotel in a city you chose 3 weeks ago. You watch the coverage on a laptop. You feel something unexpected. Not relief, not triumph. A kind of enormous quiet. The thing that has lived inside every ordinary moment for a year is outside now. It is in the world. You order food. You eat it. For the first time in a year, you taste it. Stage 8. The consequence. The world does not end. This is the first surprise. The 4 named individuals retain their positions and assets because the institutions are part of the structure, and the structure does not dismantle itself in response to a news cycle. 2 parliamentary inquiries are opened and staffed with people whose careers are connected to the institutions under investigation. 1 regulator announces a review that will take 3 years. Vera calls you. She has been contacted by the same 2 men. She said nothing and called her lawyer, and they left. She is angry. Not for what you found. For not telling her sooner. For deciding to protect her without asking if she wanted to be protected. You say she is right. The call lasts 2 hours. At the end, she says she would have done the same thing. You say you know. 18 months later, a junior investigator in a parliamentary committee finds something the senior staff missed or chose to miss. A thread. The thread leads somewhere. You are no longer the only one pulling it. Stage 9. The long game. You're 38. 3 years later. The secret is no longer a secret in the technical sense. It is a known unknown. Fully visible and successfully contained simultaneously. The 4 individuals are still powerful. 2 are more careful now. 1 retired. 1 died at 81, whose estate continues operating the structures with the quiet persistence of wealth organized to outlast any individual. The signature has changed. It has not stopped. You have a different job now at a foundation funded by people who decided the long-term consequence of containment was worse than the risk of pursuit. A team of 12 across 6 countries, building the case slowly. You have learned something in 3 years. The world's deadliest secret is not the information. The deadliest secret is that the information can be known and nothing changes. That knowledge and power are not the same thing. That crossing the distance between what is true and what becomes real requires not a single act of courage, but years of patient, unglamorous, invisible work. You do the work. The pattern is still there. You are still following it, not the electric clarity of the first discovery. Something quieter and more durable. The specific satisfaction of a person who chose not to look away and who is still, 3 years later, looking. Stage 10. The record. Somewhere in an encrypted archive distributed across servers in 7 countries is a file. The original model output from a Tuesday night in November in an empty office in Geneva. It has been copied and stored in locations chosen so that no single action can eliminate it. It exists with journalists, lawyers, and academics in 11 countries who agreed to hold it as institutional memory. The file contains a pattern. The pattern is real. The pattern is still running. 40 years in, still running, having incorporated every attempt at interruption as information to adapt from. You found it. You showed it to the world. The world looked and looked away and looked back and is still deciding what to do with what it sees. This is not failure. This is how the largest true things move. Slowly. Against resistance. Inch by inch through institutions built to resist exactly this. Somewhere a junior investigator is reading something carefully. Somewhere a data analyst is frowning at an output and running it again. Nothing real hides forever. It waits for the person patient enough and precise enough to find it. You were that person once. There will be another. There always is.